Welcome in, everybody, to the Batflip podcast. My name is David. I am here with Matt today. Damien is out taking care of a sick dog, so we are hoping Damien's dog is okay. But me and Matt are going to bring you episode 151 of the Batflip podcast. We are going to discuss tonight all the awards. A few of them haven't been awarded yet, including MVP and Cy Young, but we kind of know who's going to win those, I think. There's not really many surprises for the awards show tonight. Then we're going to finish up the manager carousel, talk about the last three managers that got hired this last week. Then we're going to go over a few extra news and notes before we kind of finally put the 2023 season to bed and enter the offseason with future transactions and also enter the holiday season because we'll be off next week for Thanksgiving. Matt, how you doing before we get started?
I'm doing pretty good. Had a pretty nice week. Watched a lot of football this weekend, and just hanging out. And I'm getting ready for next week. Short week. You got the holiday coming up, Thanksgiving next week. So, been a pretty good week, and yeah, everything's well. How's it been going for you, David?
It's going all right. No complaints, but we are working towards this off season where I've got like I think I said it last week too. I've got all the optimism of the off season without any of the actual stuff to back it up right now. So just hoping for some more when it comes to the off season for us. But with that, let's kind of get into the awards here, and we'll start with the two that got announced yesterday. So that would be Monday, November 13th. Those were the NL and AL Manager of the Year. We'll start with the AL Manager of the Year and note that that was Brandon Hyde of the Baltimore Orioles, a team that won over 100 games. I think this was the clear choice. Matt, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Hyde did a wonderful job for the Orioles this year. Eh, the largest part of a manager's job is to kind of just guide the team through a grueling, long season. And it's especially difficult when you have so many young players who have never been through that long and difficult full season and maybe don't have that veteran mentality that of going out and doing your job every single day. Because in baseball you're going to win a lot of games, you're going to lose a lot of games, and I think Brandon Hyde did a wonderful job keeping this team, on staying the course all year. Um, I think he did a fine job managing their pitching staff as well. I mean, they had some depth concerns in their pitching staff. Had a couple of elite relievers at the back of their bullpen, at least until the end of the season when Felix Batista got hurt. But their rotation wasn't. They didn't have there's tons and tons of talent in their rotation. So managing them to have the pitching staff to win over 100 games was great. And pretty much anytime you get a Manager of the Year award, it's such a hard award to judge. And a team that is a new team to the party, the postseason party, or a team that you feel like has overachieved, anything like that, that's the guy who's going to win the award. And I think Brandon Hyde definitely did a great job this year and was deserving of this.
Yeah, I think your manager of the year award is typically an award where you're just awarding the guy who happened to be the head of the team that overachieved the most in a given season. And I think that reflects on the manager of the year for the NL that we'll discuss in a minute. But Brandon Hyde came from the Joe Madden coaching tree. He was the bench coach of I believe the 2016 World Series winning Chicago Cubs. Went over there, I believe 2019 or 2020, one of those, and he's been really solid. He managed through kind of the down years of that Baltimore team before they got good, and he's being rewarded now for being that steadying presence over there in Baltimore. So, I'm definitely happy for Brandon Hyde. I'm happy that he gets this not award, and it's not it's not really something specifically skillful. I think Craig Counsell's been the manager, the runner up to manager of the year like six times now. So I don't know how much this award means,
Y-
but
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Brandon Hyde having been there a while. It's kind of rare that when a manager sticks through a rebuild and then doesn't get replaced as the team starts to go into contention mode. And I think that that's something that, maybe last year the plan might have been for Brandon Hyde to, not be there after last year, but they overachieved so much that they kept him around. And now this year a 100-win team. But I really like to see them. I mean, so many times you see a manager, just be the fall guy for the rebuild, and then they go hire
Mhm.
somebody out there when they are ready to compete again. And I think that Brandon Hyde, I'm glad that he was able to see it out and get to manage this, really good Orioles team now and for the foreseeable future as well.
Yeah, and there's something to the Orioles specifically doing this, because that's not an organization that typically, yeah, revolves around winning. They kind of, reward loyalty a little bit more. And I think you've got some other organizations, especially considering the Cubs, who are kind of doing that same thing, where they're coming out of the downturn and they went and hired, Craig Counsell for the most money a manager's ever made, right? It's a different philosophy. And I think that, there's definitely praise to be had on both sides, but the Orioles are definitely in a different position here, and rewarding Craig Count or sorry, Brandon Hyde is a good thing, and hopefully he sticks around with them for a long time, especially after winning 100 games last year. The National League Manager of the Year award winner was Skip Schumacher for the Miami Marlins. Um, the Marlins won 84 games, made the playoffs, and they had a really good record in one-run games. Which, if you're going to count a stat towards the manager, typically that's the one that kind of gives the manager the most skill towards influencing. So, Matt, what do you think about Skip Schumacher taking it over Craig Counsell and Brian Snitker, who were the runner-ups?
Yeah, for first off, out of those runner-ups, I don't know how Torey Lavello wasn't one of the guys here too, but
Mhm.
Skip Schumacher did it. I mean, he did a great job for the Marlins. I mean, you have a team that hasn't been to the postseason in, you know, other than the COVID shortened season, which doesn't, I honestly don't even count that. The last time they were in the postseason in a real season was 2003.
Mhm.
So, it's been 20 years, and the Marlins, they added a couple pieces here and there, but like they've pretty much had the same roster this year as what they had last year and the year before last. And honestly, even lesser because they had some injuries to their pitching staff. Which, coming into the season, if someone told me that the Marlins would make the playoffs, I would have thought, well, it's I don't think it's going to happen, but with that pitching staff, everything clicks there. I think they might be able to win enough low scoring games to get up, over 500 and have a chance if the wild card is low. But with all the pitching injuries, I never would have thought that the Marlins. I mean, they lost Trevor Rogers, they lost Sandy Alcantara for most of the, or not for most of the season, but for a good portion of the season. Sixto Sanchez has never come back. And then of course they had traded Pablo Lopez in the offseason. So all these you know, and Edward Cabrera hadn't worked out. So all these young Max Meyer got hurt. Like all these young starters that they had coming up that everyone was so excited about, none of them except for Luzardo and even and Braxton Garrett to a certain level have really panned out at this point. With especially with Alcantara being hurt, so um, the Marlins scrapped together enough runs. In games that they won enough one-run games to make it in the postseason, and that's just it was a tough situation to handle. There's a lot of pressure on them. They were kind of had their backs against the wall all year, and I think Skip Schumacher did a good job of kind of handling that, guiding that team, and they were able to make it to the playoffs. And I think that it's definitely a he's definitely a deserving winner of this award.
Yeah, I think he is, right. S- Skip Schumacher did a really good job. The Marlins got a lot more out of their bullpen than I think was expected of them in the preseason, right? I mean, Tanner Scott kind of emerged as a potentially a star closer. Um, you had AJ Puck, who they got value out of after trading JJ Bleday for him to the A's. You saw some other guys emerge, and the Marlins have a really good development of the pitching, which is kind of their bread and butter, right? They've got a lot of guys who are 97, 98, and Skip Schumacher was able to distribute them, effectively to keep those runs down. And once they added Jake Berger at the deadline, that's kind of where the offense took took off a little bit. And Luis Arias, we can't talk about the Marlins without talking about Luis Arias, who flirted with 400 for about half the season before kind of falling back to earth. But he still had a really, really strong season for a guy who, is kind of known as a contact hitter, but he was a really effective contact hitter that put together a lot of value for this Marlins team. Was always on base, was always getting base hits. So it, it's a good award, a good award recipient there, and Council's Brewers and Snicker and Tori Lavello, all three of those guys probably could have gotten this award, but given the relative expectations going into the season, which is the entirety of the Manager of the Year award in the first place, Skip Schumacher's the deserving one because the rest of those guys all had some playoff aspirations anyway. Schumacher did not, right, with the Marlins. So definitely a solid award recipient for sure. Let's look at the rookie of the years. And I think I actually got them mixed up. I think the rookie of the years went yesterday. Manager of the year went today, but I went with least important first. Rookie of the year in the AL was Brandon Hyde's shortstop, Gunnar Henderson, who won in unanimous fashion, beating out, I believe, Tanner Bybee and Tristan Casas. Bybee of the Guardians, Casas of the Red Sox. So Gunnar Henderson, I think he had 28 home runs this year for the Orioles, Matt. Worthy rookie of the year in your eyes?
Oh, absolutely. Gunnar Henderson was the front runner coming into the season, was the top prospect in baseball. He had a fantastic year. 123 WRC plus on the season. He had 4.6 WAR this year as a rookie. So I mean that's like an all-star caliber player. Um, and as a rookie, and I don't think either one of those other guys. I mean, Casas had some good moments this year. He's all right. He was really poor defensively, but and played first base as well. But he had a good season, 130 WRC plus for him, and of course he had a lot of plate appearances last year, almost 100 plate appearances last year. And then Beebe was a pretty nice piece for Cleveland. He had a good rookie year. Um, 3 WAR for him was nice. I kind of surprised Josh Young wasn't a finalist, but I was that was kind of surprising to me, but this was yeah, I mean Gunnar Henderson was pretty clearly the guy who should win this award. So definitely definitely a worthy winner.
Yeah, and I think the big thing when it comes to Gunnar Henderson is that he showed he could stick at shortstop. They aren't having, frantically trying to find a way to move Gunnar Henderson off of shortstop to, put Jackson Holiday there going forward, right? I mean, I think that was the biggest development for Gunnar Henderson. We all knew he could hit. That was never really a question when it came to a prospect like Gunnar Henderson, who was up there at, 1, 2, 3 on most prospect lists. And he not only did he hit, but he put together, a 345 WOBA, 123 WRC plus, 28 home runs, 100 runs scored, right? He did everything well. He ran the bases well, stole 10 bases, and put together a good fielding year at shortstop. And I think that's the biggest key for me moving forward as a development for the Baltimore Orioles is that Gunnar Henderson can be an effective shortstop for you. You don't have to, pencil Jackson Holiday in there going forward. You've got a shortstop now. And yeah, I mean, absolutely deserving of the AL Rookie of the Year. It was on your list of our preseason predictions, but we did try to kind of shift our preseason Rookie of the Year around because our awards were kind of obvious in our eyes going forward in terms of predictions. So you got Gunnar Henderson right there. Um, in terms of the NL Rookie of the Year, that was Corbin Carroll, surprising no one. And, we all mentioned it similarly at the beginning of the season in the awards preview and predictions episode, where we all kind of said Corbin Carroll would be that guy. But I mean, he stole 54 bases. He had 25 home runs. He had a 133 WRC plus, 6 wins above replacement, and he led the Diamondbacks to the playoffs and into the World Series. So Matt, I don't think Corbin Carroll's anything but a worthy of this unanimous pick. But take us through his Rookie of the Year season.
Oh yeah, I mean he was incredible. Just there's not a lot you can say about him, honestly. I mean, he's an awesome player. 133 WRC plus as a rookie playing, and with his outstanding base running, he actually was a little bit disappointing defensively compared to kind of his what people think he's going to be. He was graded as a 70 field as a prospect, and he was pretty far, pretty far under that. But a lot of defensive metrics are noise, so his WAR really could have been higher. But six WAR, I mean, you know that's a borderline top 10 player in baseball as a rookie, and
Hmm.
he's only 22 years old, and not to mention the fact that the Diamondbacks locked him up long term too.
Hmm.
So just what a talent this kid is. And I would be surprised if he doesn't. I don't know if he'll put up 6 WAR every single year, but I will be surprised if he's not a perennial All Star after the season. And
Hmm.
fantastic. And to be honest, he was such a shoe in for this award that I didn't even know who the other finalists were. So,
Yeah, I'm not going to mention the other finalists as much as we like to keep it open. I This award was so shoe in that we're just going to stick with talking about Corbin Carroll's season because he was just so good this year. Foolish Baseball put out a video regarding Corbin Carroll's base running specifically. Had the highest BSR of all time. Since Fangraphs has been able to measure BSR, which includes going from first to third and some of those other metrics, getting not calculating against like getting thrown out on the bases and stuff. Corbin Carroll was really really good at a base running this season, and he was just that created so much extra value on top of already being a really effective player. I mean, he had a 370 WOBA, and I really like WOBA because it's kind of boils all the numbers we always look at down to kind of a batting average style number, right? 400's like amazing, and he had a 370 WOBA, which was equivalent to like Kyle Tucker, level. If you just kind of look from right, out corner outfielder to corner outfielder, he was like the same level as Cody Bellinger this year. He was get guys who were getting, Austin Riley at a 363 WOBA this year, right? Better hitter than Austin Riley just based on that. That just absolutely remarkable for a guy who's a rookie. And I don't want to toot my own horn, but I really do. Was that I called that he would be in the MVP conversation to begin the year. But then I also picked him along with Trey Turner based on the stolen bases going up, and the stolen bases went up, but neither of them are going to win MVP because somebody else stole a lot of bases,
yeah,
and we'll talk about him at the end of this.
yeah, and I do want to mention I downplayed the other finalists. James Outman put up 4.4 WAR this year, which is awesome for a rookie season. Even though I think he was a little bit lucky on balls in play and stuff, he had he's been good across the board. And then Kodai Senga coming over from Japan had a solid rookie season. It's kind of hard to vote for him for rookie of the year because he's like a 30-year-old. It's one of
Yeah.
those things where it's like he's a veteran pitcher, so he probably loses some points there. But both of those guys in a normal year might win Rookie of the Year. But I
Hmm.
mean, Corbin Carroll's not normal, so
That's true. And yeah, we gotta make sure we get Damien's Dodger in there, just for good measure. But um, Outman was really good defensively, and Kodai Senga's Ghost Fork is going to be tormenting the major leagues for several years to come. So I also want to mention Matt McLean of the
yeah,
Reds. Right, he probably gets on this list if he doesn't go down with injury
yep,
before September starts and the Reds collapse out of the playoff race. So he was really good as well. Moving on to the next award, we'll go to the NL Cy Young, or the AL Cy Young rather. The three award finalists are Garrett Cole, Kevin Gossman, and Sonny Gray. The expected winner is Garrett Cole, and I think that that'll happen. But what are your thoughts on if either Gossman or Gray should overtake Cole in the voting, and if any snubs happened on our list here?
so I think that I think that sometimes when you look at the Cy Young Award, I think that you have to look at these guys are all real similar. I mean,
Hmm.
they all put up around a 3 ERA, or slightly below. Gossman was slightly above. They all put around a 3 FIP. Coles was above 3. Sonny Grays was below, and Gossman was below. And they all pitched a really nice workload. Now Cole did pitch a few more innings than the other guys. He pitched 209 innings. Gray pitched 184, and Gossman pitched 185. Um, I think that Garrett Cole will probably win the award. Um, and he had a great year. I think that Garrett Cole is underappreciated, and I think in some ways this is probably kind of a career award for him because he's been so good for his career and he's finished second a couple times or been in the running and not won it a couple times. And you know, I think he does deserve for his career a Cy Young award at some point. So, you know, this is a year where he's right there. I mean, him, Sonny Gray, and Kevin Gossman were all within 1.1 WAR of each other, which is pretty remarkable. You know that it was that close between them. You know, so I definitely think that those are definitely the three guys who should be the finalists. And you know, I really do like. I do think Garrett Cole's probably deserving just because he basically pitched the same as those guys. He just pitched like 25 more innings. So I think it's probably the guy.
Yeah, strictly on an earned run average, basis, Garrett Cole's the guy. He and Kevin Gossman, his FIP was the same as Kevin Gossman's
Yeah.
ERA. Gossman had a little bit more in strikeouts. You could have talked me into any of these three. You
Oh yeah.
probably could have lumped Pablo Lopez into this group as well. I think he's maybe just a touch behind because the ERA doesn't match the peripherals for Pablo Lopez. And I hate to bring it up, but Garrett Cole does have 15 wins compared to 12 for Gossman and only 8 for Sonny Gray. It's not important, but it is a another bullet point
Yeah.
towards, I think, bringing Garrett Cole above those
Yeah.
guys. He was just more impactful in some of those games that the Yankees did manage to win.
And one other note on this, you know, when you have such a close race between three guys, um, I think that you can start to bring in a lot more of the expected numbers. And Sonny Gray was awesome this year, but he had a 5.2% home run per fly ball rate, which is
Mhm.
unsustainably low, and that really contributed to to his FIP being so low and his ERA being so low. He just had some, and I mean he had a great year. Don't get me wrong, but he had some good fortune on fly balls, and when you have basically a three-way tie, you know, I think that is something you can kind of factor in as well.
One more note there, just to try to differentiate it a little bit. Garrett Cole did tie for the major league lead in shutouts
Yeah.
with two. He and Framber Valdez each got two shutouts, complete game shutouts, and for a kind of a trait that's going away in terms of pitcher stamina, that's more and more valuable. Being able to completely take the bullpen out of the game and keep them fresh for the rest of the series, that's something that isn't really getting honored. I think that is another point in Garrett Cole's favor, and you just have enough of those where I think it's pretty smart to give Garrett Cole this award. Um, let's go to maybe a more diversive Cy Young race, and let's look at the NL Cy Young here. The three finalists are Blake Snell, Zach Gallen, and Logan Webb. So first thing, Matt, tell me why Justin Steele was snubbed from being a finalist, and second off, tell me why Blake Snell is going to win this award.
Well, Blake Snell's going to win this award because he outperformed his FIP by over a full run. But I mean, I don't, I can't explain Justin Steele. The only thing that I think is probably not in his favor is he only pitched 173 innings. He
Yeah.
missed some starts there in the middle of the season, and you know, other than that, I really don't. I mean, I would have put him definitely in the top three. You know, the way that I look at awards, you know, I believe that with pitchers especially ERA, I know it's a great, you know, you know, it's a big deal and it should be taken into account, but you know, there's a lot of things working against pitchers. And I mean, Zach Wheeler, I think you could have made an argument for him. I mean, he had
Yep.
you know, he had a 315 FIP. He pitched 192 innings. You know, but he was pitching in front of one of the worst defenses in baseball. And that kind of contributed to him having a little bit of higher ERA. I mean, Aaron Nola is always the same way. Like now he's not really a candidate for me this year, but he actually had the same WAR as, or he had, yeah, roughly the same WAR as Blake Snell. But you know, he's kind of the same way where the Phillies defense gave him a 4.50 ERA when he really probably didn't deserve that. um, but I mean, you could have made an argument for Spencer Strider to be a finalist because
Yep.
I mean the strikeout numbers are insane, and he definitely had the best rate numbers of expected numbers out of any of them. He had a 292 xFIP, which led baseball out of starting pitchers. You know, I mean, I I have a hard time. I would have a hard time voting for a guy who has 5 walks per 9 innings. I mean, I
Mhm.
just I know the ERA was great, but a little bit of that's fortune. You know, I don't fully believe in that. So if I were to give the award, I mean, out of the three finalists, I guess I would probably vote for. I mean, out of the three finalists, I'd probably say Logan Webb was the best pitcher. I mean,
Yeah.
he had a 3.25 ERA. His rate stats were really good. Had a 2.95 xFIP. And he had 5 WAR, 216 innings pitched as well, which was like 40 more innings than Blake Snell pitched, and a couple more innings than Zach Gallen pitched. But I mean, Zach Gallen had an argument as well. I just think between those two, Spencer Strider, Zach Wheeler, and Justin Steele, you've got guys who had a really good year, and then you've got Blake Snell who had a little bit of a fortunate year. But I mean, when you have a 2.25 ERA on the season, you obviously did something right. So him winning the award, it's not necessarily a travesty or anything, but I get why people are voting for him, but it probably wouldn't be my pick.
I gotcha. I don't want to. I would say this would not have been necessarily been my three finalists. I don't think. Snell is an interesting case because of that ERA, but he had an 87% left on base rate, which was 7% higher than the next closest pitcher, which hilariously enough was Garrett Cole, who's going to win the other Cy Young. So Blake Snell's. You talked about fortune. I think Blake Snell was. This is maybe one of the most fortunate seasons of all time, given how many walks he truly generated. And I wanted to pull it up because it's a kind of an absurd number. Blake Snell led all of baseball, not just the NL, all of baseball in walks with 99 walks. If you attack on the hit by pitches, he was over 100 free batters that he put on base by himself. Right? He only gave up 115 hits. He gave up almost as many walks as he did hits, right? Which is absurd, right? I mean, and not only did he only give up the 115 hits, but he led baseball in hits given up as a pitcher, right? That just very very fortunate year for Blake Snell, and a lot of that is stuff. A lot of that is his ability to create swing and miss with that fastball and the curveball. But Blake Snell's going to have two Cy Young awards like 5 years apart, and in each league and have changed teams, and he has only ever thrown 180 innings twice. He's going to have a Cy Young in both of those
Yeah.
years. So this is a guy who just he kind of thrives on that fortune, right? And I went back and looked his Cy Young award year, 88% left on base rate
Yeah.
that year. He got 87% this year.
And look at the
That'll do
BABIP
it.
on those two seasons as well.
Mhm.
256 BABIP this year, 241 BABIP in 2018. I mean, that's super low. And it's not like Blake Snell's this guy who gets tons of weak contact either. Like, he's a strikeout guy. He gets a lot of strikeouts. I mean, his his hard hit rate was 34%. His expected ERA was 3.77. I mean, he's a great pitcher. Don't get me wrong. Like, and
Yeah.
you can definitely give him this award, and I wouldn't totally argue against it because of the ERA. At the end of the day, he didn't give up a lot of runs, but I'm fully on board with one of the other guys.
At least in the last time he won the Cy Young, also he had 21 wins, which makes you feel a little better about it that he was kind of contributing to the team's success. Spencer Strider had 20 wins, Justin Steele had 16, Zach Gallen had 17, Blake Snell only had 14, right? And Logan Webb had 11. And it's just it's one of those things where look, wins are not all that, but once you get down to this we have to nitty grit pick the the bare differences between these elite starting pitchers. I'm looking at those walks, like you said. I'm looking at those stats that kind of indicate luck, and then I'm looking at did the team win when you pitched. Wins aren't a great example of that, but Blake Snell's team didn't win
I
as
mean,
much as some of these other teams did. I mean, Spencer Strider's team won just about every time he took them out.
yeah, but if you look at Blake Snell too, like, I mean, how many times, and Logan Webb for sure, how many times did they
Hmm.
leave the game down like 1-0? I
Right.
mean, like it's especially for those two because their offenses were bad. Like I think Spencer Strider won 2 or 3 games that he gave up like 7 runs because the Braves
Hmm.
offense was just scoring 20 runs. Like it,
Yeah.
it is a big,
And that's why
you know,
wins aren't going to be an end all
yeah,
be all, right? That's something we talk about at the end of the discussion to
yeah,
see if there's any way that moves the needle. I do want to note Spencer Strider, 281 strikeouts, 50 strikeouts more than the next
yeah,
best pitcher in Major League Baseball. I feel like he was very much snubbed from this list, but also there's only three names, and he had a 3.86 ERA, so
yeah,
tough to put him on here, but also tough to leave him off. And then like I said, Justin Steele was really good this year as well. You didn't walk anybody, he kind of showed out, but he only threw seven fewer innings than Blake Snell did this year. And he was probably the favorite to get there until September. And it seemed like he kind of ran out of steam once he got to September. Had that blow up start against the Braves that I think was that's the game after the Seiya Suzuki game. And it was just I think it was his last start of the year, and he wound up in the fifth inning giving up like 4 or 5 runs that took him over an ERA of 3, and I think it kicked him out of the finalists for Cy Young.
yeah, probably.
So with that, let's go over to AL MVP, which seems like it's going to be an obvious one, but I think there's maybe a little something happening in the voting that would kind of drawn it away from being a race. Shohei Otani's going to win AL MVP, I think, rather easily due to the amount that he pitched this season. But he missed the last half of the year. And the two guys who are going to follow him up in voting are Corey Seager and Marcus Simeon, both of whom are World Series champions. So, we've litigated Otani a lot, I think, over the last week, given that he is currently a free agent. But first of all, let's go through his season and note why he's going to be the MVP. But um, you know, I would say I think the two Texas guys, if one of them had been able to compile numbers equivalent to Otani offensively, I think there would have been a run for the money. And I think there's a little bit of vote splitting here between those guys. But Otani's just he's something else, man.
Yeah, I mean, Otani. You talk about Corey Seager. Otani played 20 more games than Corey Seager, or 15 more games than Corey Seager actually. Like Corey Seager, if you remember, had a hamstring injury, missed a lot of time too, and he still put up 6.1 WAR. I mean, Otani as a pitcher alone put up more WAR than either one of those guys. I mean, as a DH alone put up more WAR than either one of those guys. And then of course he had a pretty good season on the mound as well, putting up looks like two and a half WAR on the mound to go along with his 6.5 WAR. At the plate. So I mean, I don't think you can vote against Otani on this award. I mean, Corey Seager, I think if you look at I think there's an argument to be made if you are somebody who looks at like team success with the MVP for Corey Seager, because he really drove a lot of the Rangers' success as a team. They don't win the World Series without Corey Seager. So if that's the angle that you look at, you could maybe make an argument there. But like, I mean, you know, Shohei Otani put up 9 WAR on the season.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he put up 3 more WAR than either one of these guys. And Marcus Simeon had a great year, and I'm glad he's a finalist because he deserves to be a finalist. But he played 162 games. He put up 753 plate appearances this year, um, which is crazy. And
He
he had
set
a great. What's that?
he set the record for most plate
Yeah,
appearances in a season combining playoffs
yeah,
and regular season. So
yeah.
you don't see that very much from guys anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, 6.3 WAR for him maybe is a little bit, his rate stats aren't as good as those other guys. I mean, he had a 124
Mhm.
WRC plus. Now he was a great defender, and he rated out well by the metrics on base running. Although he didn't steal a ton of bases, which so his counting stats won't quite be there. But 100 RBIs and 122 runs for him was nice. He almost hit 30 homers, he hit 29. But definitely those other two guys. I mean, Corey Seager and Shohei Otani are the two top. And I mean, I don't see how you can. I don't.
Mhm.
Shohei Otani should win it.
Yeah, I mean he was the
Yeah,
best hitter in baseball this year, and it's one of those where if you took the pitching out completely, right, which you can't do, but if you took the pitching out completely, he'd still win this award, which blows my mind, right? I mean, and that's why he's going to set the record for biggest contract, awarded here. Um, he's just a special player. He's a special person. He's the kind of guy I think every fan base should be clamoring that their team, gets the sign here. And it's going to be up to it's going to be up to him. He's going to have his choice of where he wants to go, and he's going to have a fresh, shiny MVP award. I believe that's his second MVP award because last year he
Yep.
didn't get it because Aaron Judge. So, two MVP awards and coming off of a 3 year stretch where he had a WRC plus of 150, 142, and 180 in those 3 years, which was pretty comparable to the Aaron Judge the
I don't know
Aaron
about
Judge
that.
3 years before,
I
right?
was
I
gonna
mean,
say Aaron Judge had
Judge had the 216.
206 or 216. Yeah,
It was you're right. I think it was 206, but before that it was like 150, 150.
yeah,
So 150, yeah, 150, 140, right? So
yeah.
a little bit, pretty much a similar amount of success, right, in the 3 years leading up to the free agency. So if you were just signing the DH Shohei Otani, which you're not, right? You're signing him for the potential to be a more than that, but you're essentially signing Aaron Judge, who just made $360 million over
Well,
10 years, 9 years, right, with the Yankees in
it's
his last contract. So,
I was gonna say. I mean, it. You know, Aaron Judge also plays really good outfield defense. So, you know, the just straight up DH to outfield to Aaron Judge comparison probably isn't the best, but it's still. I mean, Aaron Judge put up over 10 more last year. So,
mhm.
like it's but either way, I mean, yeah, Shohei as a hitter alone is worth a huge contract, and then of course you add in the fact that after this year he will hopefully be back on the mound and healthy on the mound. But you know, but what a talent he is. It's just I'm glad we get to watch him. It's fun.
No snubs on the AL MVP list. Let's go to the NL MVP list, where I also don't believe that. Well, I believe one guy is going to get snubbed here, but currently the finalists are Ronald Acuna, Mookie Betts, and Freddie Freeman. Ronald Acuna is going to win this award. Matt Olson, was he snubbed?
I don't
54 home runs.
I don't think he was really snubbed. Um, I think that you know he put up over the only guy. I mean, Mookie and Ronald are definitely gonna are easily the top two.
Hmm.
You know, you look at Freddie Freeman versus Matt Olson then, and you could make an argument for either one of them. You know, one argument that you could make is, you know, the metrics on defense. Freddie Freeman graded out a lot better on defense than Matt Olson. Now, first base defense can be a little bit wonky, especially with those metrics. You know, there Freddie Freeman put up a 163 WRC plus to Matt Olson's 160. The one thing that I will say about that is Freddie Freeman had a 370 batting average on balls in play, which is like unsustainably high. He just had a really fortunate year with his batted ball luck, which I mean, I don't mean to demean his season. It was fantastic, but you could argue that he probably, you know that Matt Olson was probably the pure talent better hitter. But I mean, Freddie Freeman put up over a full WAR more. Freeman also was a fantastic base runner, putting up a great, a great 23 stolen bases and over five base running value. So I don't think Matt Olson was snubbed. I think you could have argued for him with the home run record, but I don't think he was really snubbed. But yeah, out of the three, I mean, Ronald Acuna Jr. and Mookie Betts were both the top two, and they actually ended up tied in WAR. But you know, Ronald Acuna's season was historic with the stolen bases, 73 stolen bases. Um, you know, Mookie Betts is definitely a better defensive player than Ronald. Kept his, kept their WARs very similar. But you know, when you hit 41 homers and steal 73 bases, and you know that historic that's going to be the tiebreaker here. You know, it's just that is just an unbelievable year, and you can argue too. I mean, Ronald Acuna, he meant so much to the Braves. The pressure he put on other teams, you know, at the beginning of games, like just he was insane.
I found a stat here while you were going through Acuna. Since 1995, so my entire lifetime, since basically the '94 strike when they kind of introduced the steroid era and whatnot, Ronald Acuna had the second highest pure run total since 1995. The only guy higher was Jeff Bagwell in 2000, whom I believe won. And I know he didn't win an MVP that year, but that was a historic year for the steroid era, and a bunch of guys juicing, and all the runs are coming from 95 through 2001, basically. Ronald Acuna has cemented himself in the run leaderboard as number two behind Bagwell, and that's with 73 stolen bases. That's with 41 home runs. That's in an era where pitchers are throwing faster, where average pitcher is a much better player. Ronald Acuna has put down a season of historic proportions, and he will get awarded as such. I believe. I think Thursday when they announce the MVP. His what's funny, I think, about Acuna season two was we talked about it a number of times, but he cut his strikeout rate in half. It finished at 11.4. He almost walked as much as he struck out. I believe in total he walked one less time than he struck out, including intentional walks, which is objectively hilarious given that his issue kind of a couple of years ago was that he was striking out too much. And this year he was gone and cut the strikeout rate completely in half. He also had an ex WOBA of 463, which, I talked about WOBA being, 400 is pretty good. Well, 463 led baseball by 40 points over Shohei Ohtani in terms of expected, weighted on base average. He was unbelievable this season.
Yeah, his average exit velocity was 94.7. A hard hit ball is 95. So he basically averaged a hard hit ball every time he made contact.
Yeah, I mean that's
I mean,
that's absurd.
and he underperformed his expected batting average by like 20 points while being second in the league in average.
Hmm.
And he underperformed his expected slugging by over 60 points. And
Right,
this is a guy who had a 600 slugging percentage. So I mean, it just like this season was just bonkers how insane he was. He had 86 barrels this year.
yeah,
He also had the hardest hit ball in baseball. He hit a ball 121 miles per hour.
right. I mean, just a obscene season from Ronald Acuna. Very deserving MVP award that he's going to win here in a few days. I don't think there was any other mention here. Betts and Freeman, both good. Matt Olson, very good. Maybe could have been a top three player, but I think everyone was chasing Acuna. When you boil it down, a defense not a big issue there either. So let's move away from the awards finally and switch over to the manager carousel, where three more jobs were wrapped up. I believe the Padres are still to hire their coach. And then once that happens, we will, mention it and wrap it up. And then these teams will start to kind of fill out their rosters for next season. So first things first, we will start with, I believe, the first move that was made, which was Ron Washington, who was a coach with the Braves, getting hired by the Angels to manage once again. If you recall, he managed the Texas Rangers to the World Series in 2010 and 2011. So, Matt, what do you think about Ron Washington to the Angels?
Yeah, Ron Washington of the Angels is very, very, very interesting. Ron Washington's an unbelievable guy. He's been around forever. He has been a coach since the mid 1990s. And he was a player. His career in baseball started in the big leagues started in 1977. So, I mean, he's been around for almost 50 years in baseball. Um, and you know he's he's been a manager before with the Rangers. He went to the World Series twice as their manager. Um, so he's got a track record of success. He's got a winning record as a manager in his career, 664 and 611 record. With 521 winning percentage, pretty solid. I think that and he's been instrumental in the Braves' success the last few years as a coach, as a guy who works really well with the infielders and being in the infielder, doing a lot of infielder drills. They've really improved. You got guys like Austin Riley defensively in Atlanta that just went from being like a guy who most people didn't expect to be able to stick in the infield to being like a at least league average third baseman as a defender. And you have guys also like Dansby Swanson, who was expected to be an above average defender who became like an elite defender with Ron Washington's help. And Ozzy Albies, is a similar way. So that they've been that's kind of been his calling card as a third base coach, and now he's back as a manager again. Very happy for Ron Washington to get another shot at managing. I'm a little bit confused by the move for the Angels because you're bringing in a 71-year-old manager when you're going into a rebuild. I mean, it seems like he's going to be brought in as kind of a stopgap type, which you know, I'm a little confused by that, but I would think you'd probably want to go young with your manager. You got a lot of young players there, but I definitely understand wanting to bring a guy like Ron Washington to kind of stabilize your organization. But it reminds me a little bit of the Dusty Baker hire from the Astros. And um, we'll see how it works. I mean, I think that his team will love playing for him, and they will. He knows how to manage a clubhouse, and I think that that'll show next year and with the Angels.
I'm a little confused in the same reason, right? But Ron Washington's such a good guy. And, he's one of the. I would say he's to me what everyone thought Dusty Baker is, right? And at least I think he's a stand-up guy, a stand-up coach, the kind of guy it's easy to root for. So I'll certainly be rooting for Ron Washington in Los Angeles, but the Angels are a dumpster fire, right? We've talked about it at length. So the question is, what are the Angels going to do with Ron Washington there? You know, eh, are they going to sell off? Are they going to drop, Mike Trout? Or are they going to do? What are they going to do? And you know, if Ron Washington can simply guide them through this, I think that they'll kind of let him walk off into the sunset in terms of a major league career with his head held high as they turn it around over the next 2 or 3 years. But it's tough, man. This Angels team is really, really far away. I think, especially as they lose Otani, and yeah, it's not a good situation for Ron Washington to be stepping into. For a manager stepping into a really good situation, let's look at Joe Espada, who is going to take Dusty Baker's spot as the Astros manager. Joe Espada's been in manager rumors for several years now and never left Houston, and it was always kind of a questionable why didn't he take that job type of moment. But it's pretty evident that he wanted to just take Dusty Baker's place when he retired. I think that they said it was like his dream job. So, what do you think about Joe Espada of the Astros? I think this is a perfect fit and a really good hire.
Yeah, I mean it's a totally fine hire. I mean he's doesn't have any managerial experience, but I mean he's been around successful franchises. He was with the Yankees from 2015 to 2017, which I think he was their third base coach. Which obviously they were pretty successful. They went to the ALCS in 17. And then with the Astros, I mean, he's won, a World Series title for the Astros as a bench coach, and I think this is a continuity hire for them. I think they like their clubhouse, they like what they have there right now, and they didn't want to change a lot of things. So I think this is definitely one of those deals where I think they kind of said, "Hey, this guy's going to kind of keep the status quo in the clubhouse and everything, but he's probably also going to be maybe a little bit more, open to the analytics and stuff, and more like not playing Martin Maldonado every night." So I think it's kind of a kind of nice to see for them. And you do worry sometimes about a first time manager. You've had some of these situations in the past few years where a real qualified candidate comes in and tries to do too much, and and really has a hard time. Like you've seen it maybe with Ollie Marmol or somebody like that who seemed to be like a really quality candidate, had been with the franchise and just didn't do well. But um, I don't imagine that's going to happen here. I definitely think this was this was the right hire for the Astros.
Now, the report that came out also kind of with this hire was that the Astros were going to keep the books a little tight this offseason. I know I projected them to sign a free agent, but I think that was it last week on our free agent show. Espada's kind of got his team basically, right? Is the message there. And it's a team that he knows. It's a team that he's worked with for multiple seasons now. But it's a team that is kind of beginning that slow trend away from, I think, the top of the league, right? And it's kind of it's not the best spot you want to be in if you're a manager, is watching your team start to age, right? Altuve's in his mid 30s, Bregman's approaching free agency, Tucker's approaching
Yep.
free agency,
Well,
like
Altuve's approaching free agency too. He's a free agent after next year.
right. But and that and that's the big kicker is the report that came out said they want to keep Altuve an Astro for life, and that might come at the expense of Alex Bregman, right? And as they kind of have to sponge away this, um, the aging curve of some of these guys. He's also got to keep Jordan Alvarez healthy, right? There's a lot going on here, and it's also a team, right? It's Justin Verlander's in the rotation. There's not a whole lot of depth behind the top 3 or 4 in the rotation. So, a lot of the bullpen is now free agents, right? Phil Maton's a free agent, and some of the other guys are free agents. Neris is a free agent.
I was gonna say we'll see about the rotation because they had so many guys that went down this year.
Hmm.
Like next year, you're probably gonna have McCullers come back. You're probably gonna have Luis Garcia come back. You're probably gonna have you know I I think both of those guys are pretty big deal coming back. And there's one more that I'm blanking on that they also were missing a good portion of the year.
Hunter Brown,
So
maybe.
no, I mean he pitched. He was there most of the year, but I
He
mean
was,
another
yeah,
year of development for him too. I mean
right.
is big, and I mean I do think their pitching will be okay. But yeah, I agree. I mean it's just that this is an aging roster, and I hope that Joe Espada, even if he doesn't have the record that the previous managers have had there, I don't think it'll be his fault.
Hmm. Right. So with that, let's move over to the final slot that was filled today, which was Pat Murphy being hired by the Brewers to take over for Craig Counsell, who was the longest tenured manager in the National League. I think that now falls to Dave Roberts, if I'm not mistaken. So you know, Pat Murphy was the bench coach for Milwaukee. He was rumored to be interested in going with Craig Counsell, but Milwaukee has gone ahead and promoted him in the effort to keep him in the organization. He's a bit of a grizzled old veteran type of guy who I think will be the right kind of fit for this Milwaukee team, which is always scrappy and kind of always needs to punch above their weight, which is what Craig Counsell was really good at. So Pat Murphy to the Brewers. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, for one, first off, Pat Murphy was an awesome college coach. I don't know if anybody knows that, but he went 629 and 284 with Arizona State. They went to the College World Series multiple times, 3 times, I believe, 4 times actually. He went to the College World Series, and he also was a really good coach at Notre Dame too,
Hmm.
where he made it to 4 different regionals. So he was an awesome college coach. He went to the Padres, and he actually managed I believe about a half a season as their interim when they fired Bud Black. So he's got some managerial experience in the big leagues to a certain level, but this is kind of the same thing where the Brewers did not want to pay Craig Counsell, and they said, well, this guy knows everybody, and he can kind of keep the clubhouse, the status quo, what we've seen these last few years, and but he's not going to cost as much. So I think that the Pat Murphy was definitely the right a good hire for them, as in he's just going to keep things going how they already were, and we'll see what happens with his. We'll see what happens here. I mean, it's kind of another also similar in the way that I think the Brewers, they got these pitchers approaching free agency. They're kind of at a crossroads a little bit as a franchise. A lot of young players coming up that are talented on the position player side, but the pitching is start going to be a problem here soon. It's honestly this team's going to flip flop. They've been like this really good pitching team for the last few years, who was struggling to hit. Well, now they're going to be a really good hitting team that's struggling to pitch pretty soon. So, but we'll see what happens with him. I think he'll do a fine job. I just don't know if he'll get the same kind of credit because, as Craig Counsell leaves, so does part of their star players in their roster. So, you might look at it as a huge downgrade at the end of the day, record wise, but it might not really be his fault. Kind of in the same way that Houston might look that same way too.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty nicely. In the effort of time, I'll leave my thoughts with on Pat Murphy with, I think that the Brewers did they were trying to get the right guy, but they were also trying to keep Pat Murphy from following Greg Counsell. So I think there's something there. I think the report is the Brewers owner is really really mad about the council decision, and um, I think there's going to be some animosity next season. I think towards between those two clubs. We'll have to keep an eye on it because it could be really entertaining. But in terms of Pat Murphy, he's the perfect guy to lead that, right? I mean, he's a you know uh, guy get red in the face, kind of Clint Hurtley. Is kind of how I'm expecting Pat Murphy to be. So I think he'll be a good manager for them. Let's go over some of the smaller news, and then we'll try to talk about the Padres last here. I want to note that all the qualifying offers were rejected by the 7 free agents that we discussed last week. So all 7 of those guys stay remaining free agents, not and are tied to compensation. It will affect their markets a little bit, with the exception of Otani, but I don't think, except for maybe Sonny Gray,
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to really hamper anyone badly. I think all the teams that are we're expecting to jump in on free agent pitchers are going to be perfectly willing to pay the extra draft pick of a price to get one of those guys on their team. My one exception would be that it will improve Jordan Montgomery's market, as he is the only starting pitcher not named Yoshinobu Yamamoto who was not tied to a qualifying offer among that group.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think you could definitely see Sonny Gray maybe be limited a tiny bit by that, but I mean, teams are so desperate for pitching that I really don't think, especially for a guy who's just a Cy Young finalist, I really don't think that it's gonna impact these
Mhm,
guys too much. It's not one of those situations where like last year with Jock Peterson, where if Jock Peterson didn't take the qualifying offer, he probably could have gotten a multi-year deal, but you know, it was gonna be like nobody's gonna sign him and lose the draft pick. Like
mhm.
but I mean, I think I don't think it's gonna really hamper any of these markets this year.
Absolutely, yeah. Longtime White Sox announcer Jason Benetti does go to the Tigers. I want to mention that because it's further indication of some dysfunction in that White Sox organization. Benetti's been a White Sox fan his entire life. He called the TV job there a dream job, but was reportedly unhappy with the direction the franchise was going, and was unwilling to bend to not discuss that, and therefore they kind of let him leave on a free agent year, and the Tigers swooped him up. And the Tigers broadcast was notoriously one of the more poor ones. Also, the White Sox not real happy that he was a national guy. So
Yeah.
I think this is a really good move for the Tigers and for Benetti, but a really bad fumble by the White Sox.
Yeah, I think that he definitely, that his national work, and he's been doing that for a long time, but I think his national work definitely is part of the reason the White Sox were wanting to move on. And I don't really understand that. I mean, if you want your announcer, you want to have great announcers, and if your announcers are great, then they're probably going to get some national assignments. And I don't understand why you would get so upset about that unless they just did not want to pay someone else a small sum of money to call like the 5 games a year he misses.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's a mistake by the White Sox to not bring him back. And, there's also the story of him having cerebral palsy, and he's a big inspiration to a lot of people. And that just kind of makes this more like, you know, he mentioned in his interview about how like that he could kind of take on the persona of the Tigers because people kind of forget about Detroit and stuff, and don't see them for what they are. Whereas like he might not be seen for what he is because of that. I heard that. I think Ken Rosenthal was talking about that. I thought that was a pretty cool just. I think that was a pretty cool thing for him to come out and say, I'm pulling for him to do really well, and I'm sure that Tigers fans are probably going to be thrilled with this. So
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Love Jason Benetti. Want to also note the Brian Cashman and Giancarlo Stanton's agent have been going back and forth in somewhat dramatic way. I think there will be more steps to this tale, but the gist is Giancarlo Stanton's agent had to kind of combat some offhand remarks by Brian Cashman, indicating displeasure with Stanton's injured, injury-prone nature, and that's also Yoshinobu Yamamoto's agent. So it might take the Yankees either out on Yoshinobu Yamamoto, or it might drive the price up on them, and leave some of the other teams that we discussed as more favorites for Yamamoto specifically.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's going to affect them with Yamamoto that much, just because I mean, if Yamamoto wants to be a Yankee, I don't think his agent's going to say, well, my other client didn't. Is having a problem with them, so I'm not going to let you sign there. Like I don't think that's going to matter too much. But I mean, this Cashman Stanton thing, I think to me it just reflects extremely poorly on Cashman. I mean,
Hmm.
I've been really critical of him over the last few years. He's made a lot of really dumb moves, And this year, he's just seemed kind of unhinged with some of the comments he's made. And you don't come out and say, I mean, by all accounts, I mean, I don't think Giancarlo Stanton is pulling like a Pablo Sandoval where he gets paid and then just doesn't even try anymore. Like, I think
Hmm.
he's trying. He's just got some injury issues. And I mean, Cashman comes out in with a public statement talking about how you can't count on him and you just got to plan for him to be hurt all the time. You just can't do that as a GM. Like that's bush league, and I really don't like it. And I think Stanton and his agent should be furious with Cashman for saying stuff like that. And I mean, I just that's very unprofessional for a GM, and that should affect other free agents. I mean, they should look at Cashman and say this guy has no idea what he's doing. He's just there
Hmm.
because he's been there a long time. The Yankees don't want to fire the guy who's been there for 30 years. Like, I mean, he should have been fired a couple of years ago, honestly. And I just think it's really poor. Um, I just think it's really poor from Cashman here.
Yeah, I think you have to take that into effect. Is like if you sign a big contract, when's Carlos Rodon's turn, right? When if Cody Bellinger signs that contract and then reverts to 2021,
Yeah.
2022 self, like
I mean,
what's the GM going to say about that, right?
look
Like,
at the trades he's made. I mean, look at
yeah,
Montas, Frankie Montas.
well,
I mean,
Stanton was a trade he made, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's Frankie Montas. Look at the
Rizzo got
trade.
hurt last year too.
Yeah, look at the trade with the Cubs. They traded Efros. Like, I
Yep.
mean, he immediately gets like you don't. I understand Cashman maybe being a little bit frustrated because some of the injury issues guys have had, but like a lot of these guys you knew had injury issues when they came in. I
Hmm.
mean, so I mean, Stanton's injury issues that he currently has are not related to anything he ever had in Miami. So I understand being frustrated that he keeps getting hurt, but I mean, it's not Stanton's fault necessarily. It's just, I mean, I honestly think a lot of it's bad luck too. And
Hmm.
I just think it's if Stanton is truly out there trying really hard to play, and he obviously is when he plays, he last year he was struggling, but he's typically still pretty good when he plays. Like you can't come out and say stuff like Cashman's saying as a GM. It's unprofessional.
Right. I'm with you on that. Finally, uh, Padres owner Peter Seidler has passed away today. Um, I think there will be more ripples to come out of this one, so we'll just leave it with rest in peace, Peter Seidler. It could affect the way the Padres deal with this offseason, though, because he was likely going to be one of the guys that was clambering to keep Juan Soto for the final year. And if their budget really is as bad as it seems like it is, it seems like Peter Seidler was going for it really, really heavily before. I think he was battling with cancer, and he seemed like he was going for it before something bad happened, and it appears that the bad has happened now. So, um, we'll see, right? Because we don't know yet, but I have a feeling this will impact the Padres and may impact the trade market going forward this offseason.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I definitely thoughts to Peter Seidler and his family. I think that this definitely muddies up the offseason because the Padres were going to be a big player one way or another in this offseason. And now you don't really even have an owner at all. Like you don't know who's calling the shots. You've got a you got a GM that's kind of really the thing that was holding him own was that Seidler liked him. I mean, there's really nothing about AJ Preller that has been successful, in his tenure there. I mean, he has not done a very good job, and he's a guy that with his resume, he probably would have been fired twice by someone else. And Seidler liked him and believed in him, and now I don't know who I'm assuming that Seidler's family is in charge of the team now. And I don't know if they're going to, if they want to spend the kind of money that Seidler wanted to spend. We don't know. We don't know what this does for their payroll. We don't know what this does for their direction. Are they going to sell the team to somebody else who might want to come in and spend more money, or what? But at the end of the day, like this is just, today it's about Peter Seidler, and sad that he passed away, and hopefully, I'm, thinking about his family and everything. So
It's frustrating to me that we don't have more baseball owners like Peter Seidler. a guy who did finally step it up and say, you know what, we can spend money, we can transform us, what is a small market team that doesn't win anything, into a team that acts like a big market team. And I think he accepted some risk because of maybe some of the health issues. He accepted some risk, to try to win up front. And obviously, we talked about how it didn't work, but I believe that this is done in the right way. Right, it's done with the purpose of creating excitement for the San Diego Padres, and I think that's to be commended. And yeah, we'll hope we'll see what happens with the rest of the Padres off season this year, but thoughts and prayers are with Peter Seidler's family. So, with that, Matt, any final thoughts before we sign off on this episode 151 of the Batflip podcast?
Um, Not too much. Obviously, I'm kind of surprised we haven't gotten any signings yet, other than just the extensions that were within that 5 day extension window. Um, we usually start to have a couple of early signings where guys jump on contracts or teams jump the market early. I'm assuming that probably happens fairly soon. I do wonder if part of the problem was the GM meetings got ended early because of some some viruses going around. So that might be that might have slowed the market down, especially the trade market, because I do think a lot of trades kind of get formatted in that, even if they don't become official till later. But interesting today. They had the Rule 5 deadline to protect prospects. It'll be interesting to see if anybody gets picked in the Rule 5, but I don't think there's anything notable with that. And Friday's the non-tender deadline. That's an important day. There's not a lot of prep we can do for you on it because every team's got two or three guys at least that may or may not get non-tendered. But basically, if you don't tender them a contract offer by Friday, to arbitration eligible players, um, which is year 4 through 6 in the big leagues,
Yep.
basically of service time, basically, then then that player becomes a free agent if you don't tender them a contract offer. So, and I think that you could see some movement. I mean, last year was unusual because of Cody Bellinger getting non-tendered, which I don't think that's ever really happened where a former MVP gets non-tendered. But there were some other guys last year too, like Jamer Candelario got non-tendered, and he ended up having a really good year this year. So, that it's definitely something to keep an eye on, and there will be a few notable. There will certainly be a few notable. Guys who get non-tendered. There's always some surprises, and they become like free agents that do get picked up by somebody and are impactful next year. So that is an important day to watch, and we'll probably talk more about it on our next episode.
Yeah, Kyle Schwarber was non-tendered a few years ago. Like
Yeah,
you'll
forgot
see
about that.
names you recognize get non-tendered via performance issues, injury issues, or various other things. We're also running up towards the Rule 5 draft as well. If anything interesting happens there, we'll let you know. A lot of guys were protected today, so I think teams are starting to prepare for that non-tender deadline, and then once that hits, I think then we'll see some more movement because teams like the Cubs filled out their 40-man today, and they're going to have to DFA or non-tender some guys before Friday's deadline to open up some space to sign some free agents. So, with that, I'm David. That was Matt. This is the Bat Flip podcast. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. Everyone have a good holiday.